Because when you were talking about data sets of information, it's limited to this information. What I realized very early on in the game was when I started to recognize that the cell membrane was the brain of the cell. It took me into a whole other world of geometry and physics, and basically what I got into was that the cell membrane is the essentially equivalent of a two-dimensional structure. It's got a fixed thickness to it. And what I started to recognize is that information was represented by proteins in the cell membrane, and actually the proteins in the cell membrane that work together are two different proteins which are stimulus response. The receptor protein, which receives a signal, and an effector protein that translates a signal into a biological response. So I said, oh, well, by definition, and these are called integral membrane proteins. It's always fun. I tell the people in a lecture, I said, well, scientifically, this is called an receptor-effector integral membrane protein complex. And it goes, right? I go, well, let me try and give it to you in a sense that is more personal for the lay audience especially. Rather than giving those scientific names, just define it. The receptor represents an awareness of the environment. That's what receptors do: eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch. The significance about the effector is that's the protein that sends the signal as a physical sensation into the cell to manifest the response. Okay? Well, then I say, okay, so the definition of the receptor and effector is an awareness of the environment, receptor, through a physical sensation, effector. And when I put that down, I said, oh my God, I looked in a dictionary and sure is right there, perception. An awareness of the elements of the environment through physical sensation. So I thought, okay, instead of all that receptor, effector, stuff like that, these switches are units of perception. Each one is a precise, defined ability to take a signal and translate it into a response, okay? Well, here's the beautiful part. The thickness of the cell membrane and the dimensions of these receptor units, you cannot stack them on top of each other because the membrane and the protein almost have the same dimension. If you want to have more receptor units, then by definition you have to increase surface area. Because you can't increase thickness, more proteins, you have to have more surface to stick them in. I give the analogy of a bread and butter sandwich as a membrane and olives as the proteins. I say the thickness of the sandwich and the thickness of the olives are pretty close to the same. I can't put two olives on top of each other. So if I have a small piece of bread, a piece of cocktail rye, and I could get 5 olives on it, I say, okay, this piece of bread has an awareness of 5 perception units. I say, I want to make more perception. I say, well, first thing is you need a bigger piece of bread. So you get a big piece of sourdough bread, now you put 50 olives on it. And what'd you do? You've increased the perception ability by increasing the surface area. Well, this opens up the door to the most amazing things. Number one, if you want to model putting two-dimensional surfaces in three-dimensional space, it's a requirement to use fractal geometry, number one. That is the geometry that is interdimensional geometry that will take surface area, make three-dimensional space. The immediate knowledge of putting fractal geometry in is that the inherent nature of fractal geometry is as above, so below, because of the reiteration or iteration of self-similar structure all the way up, which means then if you understand nature, nature is fractal. And that's one of the beautiful things about fractal geometry. You can use it, you can put an equation into the computer and pull out plants and animals out of the equation. You can't do that with the conventional geometry you learn. So basically it's already been recognized, yes, nature is fractal. Significance, if you can understand the pattern, then you can project a future. Because that's a self-similar thing going on. Well, the first thing is this. What's awareness? Perception. Okay, what's more awareness? More perception. How do you make more perception? Increase surface area. Okay, the first organisms, bacteria, had a cell membrane of a defined size. They couldn't get any bigger because they were like invertebrates. They had a skeleton on the outside, kept the membrane, couldn't get the membrane to expand beyond the size of that. So by definition, bacteria as the first life form had perception, responds to the world, adjusts its biology in response to perception, and creates its life. But you can only maximize how many olives you can get in that membrane. And the significance is bacteria reached a finite size with a finite amount of awareness. And then you go, end of evolution. Can't put any more membrane molecules in there. That's the end. And they say, no, paradigm shift. Take two bacteria and put them together. Let them share their membrane. And all of a sudden you say, oh, well then two bacteria are smarter than one bacteria. And the answer is yes. So what do bacteria do? Form community. And then the community organizes itself into individual organisms as communities. So we call that an amoeba. And you say, an amoeba, it's a cell. I go, yeah, but it's an evolution of a community of bacteria under the same skin. So I say, well, then what happened? Well, the amoeba has thousands of times more surface area than any of the bacteria do. So what happens is the expansion of surface area became greater with the amoeba. And it's not like an invertebrate cell. Its skeleton is on the inside, not on the outside, which means that it can get bigger and bigger. But it reaches a finite size for a reason. Consider a cell like a water balloon. You can take a balloon, you can put so much water into it, but there's a point where if you put too much water inside, the membrane of the balloon can't hold it and ruptures. If you rupture the membrane, you break the computer chip. What does it mean? Even amoebas reach a certain size. It said, this is a standard size, there's a range, but it's a standard size of a cell. If it gets too much bigger, it's unwieldy and fragile and can break. So just like previously the bacteria came to a certain size, that's all they could do. They came into a community, created amoeba. The amoeba, now the advanced community, thousands of times more surface area, it reaches a finite size. So evolution stopped again. It couldn't make a bigger amoeba. But the pattern iterated itself. Amoeba said, what if I plugged into you? So amoebas are like computer chips, but when you start plugging them together, you build a computer out of them. And then you end up with like 50 trillion amoebas create a human being. And the human being, the surface area of the brain now is, of the cell had surface area of brain. In the human, that surface area, which is derived from the skin, the brain is, and nervous system is derived from the skin, the surface, but incorporated inside. And then if you look at vertebrate evolution, it starts out as a little round brain with so much surface area. And as evolution went and the brain got bigger, but what it also would do, start to convolute the surface by, these gyri, okay? And why is that relevant? Because the surface area got bigger and bigger and bigger. If you take the surface of the human brain and spread it out flat, it's far greater than the surface area of lower organisms, not as great as some organisms, such as cetaceans have, I think, more surface area than we do. But it's a surface area measurement, more surface area. Oh, so the human brain, the brain evolved to the level of humans, getting to a certain size, fitting inside his head, and guess what? Reached its finite size. Then what? Oh, humans were the next amoeba. Got to the highest level it could be. And then I say, yeah, but it's fractal. It's iterated the pattern. What did it do? The next level is humans join up as cells, joining a superorganism, sharing their membrane surface area, and as a result, expanding on the awareness again. It's very interesting. Going back in human civilization's history, anthropologists have found that if you go back 400,000 years in human history and you look at all the archaeological digs, that for 350,000 years, it was exactly the same. You dig up something, they had the same tools, they ate the same things, they did the same things. 350,000 years, no human advance. 30,000 years ago, all of a sudden, there was a profound change. And we made so much progress evolutionarily that today, if you were measuring it on the curve, it started out as flat, and all of a sudden it went, and now it's going up almost vertical at this moment. And the significance about that is scientists, being physical scientists, said, well, got more smarts 30,000 years ago. Must have been some new genes. We got new genes. And some said, no, the brain structure changed. So geneticists, neuroanatomists went back to compare what happened 30,000 years ago, and guess what? Nothing. And it turns out, had nothing to do with the advancement of the individual human, had everything to do with the advancement of the human community. That up to a certain size time, communities were too small. As Tom said, if one person has an idea in that community, that's really great, but if the community is too small, you can't develop or use that idea. There's not enough other people to expand on it. So if you get an example like a computer, how many ideas did it take to develop to get to the computer? It's about 50,000. You'd have to have 50,000 people just to put a computer together, each with a different idea to make it work. Well, Before 30,000 years ago, obviously populations were not large enough to do that. So the significance is evolution is fractal, repetitive pattern of creating surface area for awareness, reaching a maximum size under the conditions, the physical conditions, then jumping to another level of organization, maximizing its surface area, and upon doing that, then jumping to the next level of organization. So I say, where are we? We are at the verge of recognizing that each human is a cell in the same organism to share the information of the billions of people on this planet. Just as if I went back and asked an amoeba, well, what do you think about space travel and computers and television sets? And the amoeba's like, it couldn't even be, there's nothing you could have conceived of as amoeba. But you put 50 trillion amoebas together and we have space exploration. Why? The manifestation of higher and higher levels of awareness. The drive in evolution is expanding that surface area, and the drive that we're at right now, and as Tom is emphasizing this, is information. More and more information, as much as we can get, which is then, the whole concept of taking the randomness out of things and putting the order into it, more and more order, more and more order, more and more order. And we are at a level now of recognizing we are at a very precarious situation. And the situation is this: if we gather more awareness and then come together in unity as humanity, we can survive and thrive. And with all that awareness, it is something called emergence. The concept of new things that arise out of the numbers coming together that you could never have seen in the individuals that were putting it together.
So does that mean that the population crisis is not necessarily a crisis?
No, it's not a crisis at all. As a matter of fact, the crisis is our lack of awareness. Let me correct that. We have the awareness. It's the lack of the distribution of that awareness to the masses that's the problem. The significance is very clear, is that, look, you got under your skin 50 trillion sentient beings. Every cell is the equivalent of a miniature human, has all of our functions fractal. Every function you show me in a human being, I'll show it to you in a single cell. It's already there. We can't do it. If a cell can't do it, we're made out of cells. So the whole idea is that this fractal imagery is really telling us that the level is this. We have to come together with the awareness, the kind of bringing out of this new awareness that brings holism in, that brings love, as Tom talks about, as the fundamental drive to bring us together into that love of one humanity comprised of 7 billion cells, is the necessity of the information we need now. But we're operating from outdated, flawed scientific principles and created a culture. And Tom talked about this, the culture of what? Fear. I said, where the hell did you get the fear from? Darwinian theory. Darwinian theory said what? You're in a struggle for survival with a competition for fitness, and if you don't go out there and compete every day, you're going to be beaten into the ground and you're going to die. So everybody wakes up every day to get out there and fight in this world of I want for me, just as Tom said exactly the same thing. It's for me, it's for me, it's not for you. I need for my survival. You live in that fear, you generate the world we have now, competition, which is Darwinian. And then I say, the garden concept, garden is not competition. Garden, by definition, reflects total cooperation. The significance is our belief system, bought as a truth because we bought it from our providers of truth, scientific materialism, have given us these actually 4 fundamental truths, shape the culture, and these 4 fundamental truths that we bought and create a life from are totally flawed. Number 1 is what Tom talks about. We buy in biology a belief of a Newtonian world, and it's physical and it's chemical and all that. You leave out the invisible, the field, which I always love this because under my lecture I say, what's the definition of the field? Invisible moving forces that shape the physical world. And I go, interesting. The word spirit, invisible moving forces that shape the physical world. Is like, finally coming to the harmony here, right? Not in our conventional world. Our conventional world doesn't bring that in at all. It focuses on Newtonian, separates the invisible as not relevant, when in fact, as quantum physicists will tell you, it's the invisible that shapes everything else anyway, so it's primary. That's flawed. 2, the belief that we're genetic automatons. Oh, we're victims. Genes control who we are, which turns out this is absolutely untrue. It's our consciousness that determines who we are. Our consciousness writes our genes. Our consciousness, through changing consciousness, let's think of this. Every gene blueprint in your body, which creates a protein, a blueprint, depending on your consciousness, every blueprint you can create 30,000, up to 30,000 variations of proteins from the same gene blueprint, just by the way you respond to the world. There's no limitation. It's only limitation of consciousness, okay? The third failure is that the third and fourth are both Darwinian. The third one, which we just mentioned, is Darwinian belief that life is a struggle for existence with a competition for fitness. It's like, nature doesn't give a damn about the fittest human being. I mean, if we had to go to court for nature because nature said, look, you're destroying my garden, and we go in there with a Darwinian law practicing agent who says, yeah, but look, I know they've been destroying all this, but they had Einstein, they had Beethoven, and the judge would look at you and say, who gives a damn for the individuals? It's the mass of you that are destroying the planet. Nature doesn't care about the individuals. It says, what is the group doing? At this moment, with the lack of awareness and the misdirection of a world based on struggle and competition, we are destroying the planet as a group, and that's why nature is giving us an option to either shape up or be taken off this planet.
And is that option in play right now?
Absolutely it is right now. It's a given fact of science. We're already deep into the sixth mass extinction of life. 5 times on this planet, life got essentially wiped out and started over again. And the 5 previous versions of mass extinctions attributed things like comets hitting the planet, geological upheavals, wiping out life. And then scientists are saying, oh no, look, we're losing species of organisms faster than in previous mass extinctions. But the source is human behavior. So all of a sudden it says, wait, we're committing suicide with our belief system. And this is a time to wake up, because now, just even a couple of weeks ago, the journal Nature said, we are at the tipping point. If we do not make a different response soon, then this thing is going to accelerate downhill to a very rapid conclusion.
But the history that you've been talking about, of the fractal history of the cell,
yeah,
suggests that we will make the shift.
It says we can make the shift. It didn't say we will make the shift. I can't say that. I have no idea. We are coming to the point, the crossroads, where we either decide collectively to make the shift, or, as most people would tend to do right now, is just ignore everything gone and business as usual, go straight on to it. And the fact is, business as usual is resulting in the extinction. So that's we're not the first civilization to come to a level of awareness. And it's very important, because I just talked about the 3 misperceptions: the physics misperception, the genetics misperception, the competition misperception, and the fourth one is very critical at this moment, and that is this. Through our science, which is our current truth provider for this civilization, and in fact from the previous civilization, religion, both of those truth providers suggested that we were separate from the environment. Mm-hmm. Religion said, oh yeah, we create the environment and we stick some humans on at the top. Biology says something very similar in a different way. It says evolution is initiated by random mutations, meaning accidents. So that, why are you here? A bunch of accidental random mutations. We were here for no purpose at all. When it turns out that belief system is what's causing the problem. It says, oh, we're just on the top, we can do whatever we want. It's like, no, you missed the point. Every organism that was introduced into the environment was introduced by nature with an intent and purpose of, as Tom was talking about, creating harmony and connectivity and balance in the system. And every organism that was introduced has more power over that harmony and balance than the previous ones. So bacteria influence the environment, yeah, but humans influence it at a much more higher powerful level. And if we didn't recognize what was our purpose, to bring harmony and balance to the environment, but we are endowed with a power that can alter that environment, then we end up in the world that we're doing today. Without knowledge that we were here to bring harmony to it, we have ended up actually bringing the disharmony that Tom talks about, as the falling apart. And so this is the point. The point is, do we own what the indigenous people already knew 10,000 years ago. We were here to tend a garden. And yet we've pillaged that garden to the extent that now we've, so broken this fabric up that its survival is questionable for us, not for the planet.
Bruce, would you like to sum up what you've experienced here with Tom today?
First of all, I feel really good because I know that I go out on a limb a lot when I start talking physics and people in the audience go, yeah, you're a cell biology guy. What the hell do you know about physics? Totally, like, thank you, whatever path I took, it was like corroborated by what Tom is talking about. And it's a full, total agreement with the concept of information and mind being the physical expression of information as the membrane, and both of us are talking about what? Expanding that to this higher and higher level, which is really fun because, so you say, okay, so Bruce, you get to the point where all the humans come together and they create a new organism called humanity. Is that the end of it? And I go, no, and Tom brought this up. It's like, when we complete that, Gaia, the living organism with us, completes its evolution as a cell. And then when you go back to the fractal character of it, the first thing you recognize is when the new organism is formed, its next level is to make communities with other so-formed organisms. So we are at a level of ready to communicate, but we aren't born. We're not humanity yet. We're still a bunch of, 7 billion cells trying to coordinate this one thing. And so we can't have a dialogue with the other sources that are out there because we aren't a unity that would be involved with that dialogue. So that's coming into the front. Secondarily, the concept of putting it into fractals and the nature of all that, and Tom just touched on it, and that's why I want to bring it back up, is, look, we're struggling with 7 billion people trying to, how the hell are we going to survive on this big planet with just 7 billion people? I go, underneath your skin, you have 50 trillion citizens. Every cell is a sentient being. They live in a community. They live in harmony. They live in great adaptability. Humans, as beings, can live anywhere, and because we can adapt to everything. So what does it represent? Well, you say the human did that. And I go, yeah, but you're still not perceiving. It's the 50 trillion sentient amoebas that constitute a human that did that. And I say, we look at around and we say, how can we create the harmony and peace we're looking for? I say, well, look in, as the mystic said, the answers lie within. Go in under that skin and then say, every cell is an entity. Every cell has a job. Every cell gets paid. Every cell gets health care. Every cell gets protection. There's a social structure. There's a government, the nervous system, which is conducting, coordinating, but communicating with the 50 trillion citizens. It's not a one-way thing. The cells can certainly talk back, and if you've got symptoms of something, you've got some cells in your body complaining about something. And so I say, well, isn't that great? The answers that we need to live on this planet are already here. We just have to look inside and say, how do they do that? They have an economy, they get paid, and right away that offers like, oh my God, if you see how the economy in a human body works and compare it to the destructive economy that we have created in human civilization, you realize the human version of economy is destructive. The version of the economy inside the system is completely supportive of life. And if we modeled our economy after that, we would be taking the biggest jump that both Tom and I are talking about of putting this all together as a unity at this point, okay? So the interesting aspect about this is, if I could just give 2 minutes on that, it's really simple. Here we are with people, a massive portion of this entire population fending from day to day with not enough to stay alive. And then we have individuals that, like $50 billion, $60 billion, all these things. I go, well, does that work in the system where cells are getting paid and there's an economy? I go, no. And here's how it works in the system. This is why if we understood it and modeled off of this body, we would succeed. And basically the system is simply saying this, that, number one, wealth means money, economics, resources, energy beyond what is necessary for survivability. Once you have survivability, anything beyond that is called wealth. Well, here's the point. There is no wealth in the human body until every cell is given the very basics of life. Every cell has food. Every cell has a place to be and work and job. Every cell has got health care, protection, and all this. Every cell's got that. There's no cell with wealth until every cell is given the basics of life. Once the cells are given the basics of life and there's extra produced, that constitutes wealth. But guess what? Every cell then can accumulate wealth in the physical form of ATP molecules, which biologists actually call the coin of the realm, which are energy units. So cells can accumulate wealth, but then guess what? Then there reaches a physical limit of how much wealth they can hold on to, because they only are so physical big and can only hold so much. The next level is this. Anything beyond that covers the individual as much wealth as they could carry, wealth beyond that goes into the community bank, which is energy used by the entire community for whatever it needs for its evolution, growth, maintenance, and development. So that if I break my leg, my liver cell doesn't go, oh, you're going to take my salary to fix that leg? You know, it's basically, no, it basically says that we share, and Tom brought this up, it's the nature of, we're not out for ourselves. The cells are not out for themselves. When that happens, that's cancer. That's where a cell says, look, I don't need to participate with your system. I'm going to feed off of you, and I'm going to take everything. I'm not putting anything back. That would be a cancer. In our particular situation, as Tom brought up, it's like, no, the cells are in it for the community. And the community doesn't say it's communism. Oh, okay, all cells get paid exactly the same. Absolutely not. Neurons get so much money, they have an entourage of other cells to support them. Skin cells, they don't make anywhere near that much money, but guess what? They all have a life. They all have an environment. They all share consciousness and awareness. This is why they came together. Why? If one cell has awareness and I have 50 trillion cells, then I have 50 trillion cells, each sharing their awareness in the collective system. And with that sharing of awareness, every cell is informed of what's going on, and every cell has access to all the data. So basically, this is the model of what I think our human civilization is trying to come to, and I recognize this. We are cells, we work in harmony, we differentiate, we all have jobs, but to make that evolutionary leap, we can't say, well, you know, screw the cells in Africa. You know, who needs them? I got a lot of money. I don't care about them. It's like that's the failure of the system. The failure where the entropy is, you know, is just exploding as chaos all over the place. It's not sustainable. It will die, and then so it's basically coming to the necessity of creating a community based on sharing information, based on bringing harmony. Based on the awareness of all of us are part of the same thing, and if you hurt one other person, that would be for me to say, well, you know, listen, Chuck, I want you to go in your body, and I want you to take a bunch of cells out and kill them. I want you to take an organ out and kill it. And you go, take an organ out and kill it? What are you, crazy? You know, and it's sort of like, well, we do that all the time. We just could destroy a nation and destroy this, like, oh, that's okay, just to get rid of them. It's like, well, they miss the boat, they miss the awareness, they miss the consciousness. That's what Tom is really bringing up in the whole thing, is you can't operate without that consciousness. And since consciousness is a driving force, then the evolution that we're facing is the evolution of the consciousness, not the evolution of the biological body. We already did that part.
Right. Well, it's still going on. That simulation is still evolving, so it's not that the physical evolution is a done deal. We can still evolve, and we can maybe get an extra finger or a bigger head for a bigger brain. That's not necessarily done, but it's more or less irrelevant.
Absolutely.
You know, that's not the important. Where we need evolution is with consciousness. The quality of consciousness is what needs to evolve. We have all the physical stuff in this virtual reality that we need to succeed in the game. You know, that's the thing. We've gotten that far, and we've been there for some millions of years. But now it's taking the next step, which where we evolve the quality of our consciousness. It's not about growing a bigger head with a bigger brain. That bigger brain has already created a lot of trouble for us. Why would you think that that's the solution?
And here's a message from the bigger brain. We have run out of time.
Oh,
And the referee is calling it. You're almost going to be a penalty if we don't move on this. But this has been absolute magic. To see the two of you together, and to see your brains just go like this, is an incredible experience, and our viewer is going to see that and experience that. What has happened here today is a moment in history, because the people that are talking about getting the word out are getting the word out with each other. And this will carry far and wide. And we thank you.
We're so grateful. We're so grateful. We love you both so much. And we're just so happy to have this opportunity to share you together with the world.
I again, as when Tom, when I saw him come out of the cart, I thought, God, am I honored to have people in my sphere and communication at this level, because Tom is what I call an imaginal cell, a cultural creative, who is trying to look at the chaos that's coming out and say, look, there's a better pattern here for this. This caterpillar thing has reached its end, you know, but there's this great, beautiful butterfly. If you can see the vision, we can get there from here. And so his imaginal cellness is really showing a blueprint that says, look, this place is a garden, and the way I perceive it, of course, it's heaven on earth, because I look at it as a garden where I live, and I create that, and we all create our own places. And Tom, when he came here, which is really fun, said it felt the same where he lives, because then he's creating on the same level. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we're creating our heavens. Now, each of us as individual humans of 7 billion, we're creating their piece of heaven. Then there wouldn't be just Tom's yard out east and my yard out west. All the yards would be connected, and the whole thing would be one giant heaven. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's so exciting, and I appreciate both of you, Chuck, Karen, for allowing us to offer this to the public, because it's information that is the foundation for evolution, and clearing up misinformation, which is keeping us from making that necessary step towards survival that is necessary right now.
And I would add just a little to that. I feel exactly the same way. You know, when I first came across Bruce Lipton and I went to the webpage and I looked, you know, it's like, yeah, you know, somebody else, you know, is doing the same thing, because one person isn't going to get the word out.
No.
It's just not going to work. It's going to take me and Bruce and 10,000 other people to be talking about this and trying to get people to think about this before it's ever going to work. So, you know, the more the merrier. I went to see Dean Radin yesterday, you know, and Dean's trying to do his part. And all these parts come from different directions. You know, a certain group of people will kind of understand it the way I say it. Another group of people will understand it the way Bruce says it. Another group of people will understand it the way Dean says it. And we all need to share, and the more we can interact, I think the better, because then these various groups kind of see each other as allies rather than, no, this is the truth. Yeah. No, that's the truth. You know, they don't know what they're talking about. Hey guys, it's all the same thing. Let's kind of get together and spread the word.
And you have perfectly demonstrated that today. That you can talk in the same concept level, at the same language, from two distinct different disciplines and two distinct backgrounds. You've demonstrated it. That this is how we're going to be talking to each other from now on. This is how it's going to work.
Well, you know why that works is that there's but one truth. There's only one truth, but there's 10,000 different ways to approach that truth, and all of them are valid. Eventually, seekers end up at the same place, you know, more or less, because they're all working their way to this one big truth. And some only get partway there for this path and some the other, but it takes all of us working at this truth from our own perspectives with our own set of metaphors to actually get this ball rolling. And that's the important part, because we don't have an infinite amount of time to do this. Time is limited. You know, we have this big brain that can do all sorts of marvelous things, like make hydrogen bombs, you know, but we also have this big brain that can understand this bigger picture and see that, you know, love is the answer. So that part of the brain, that growing up, that maturing, that evolving part of the consciousness needs to get there in time to keep that other big, you know, part of the brain from blowing us all to hell in the meantime. So that's kind of the race we're in right now.
It's a race.
And we're running out of...
We're coming close to the finish line, one way or the other.
Right, we're running out of clean air, we're running out of, you know...
Water.
Yeah, we're running out of things, so we need to, you know, we need to get this idea across that what's important. What are we here for? You know, what should you be doing? You know,
And I want to say, and I go with his understanding. It was all about love. It's all about love. The whole bottom line.
And John Wheeler, the great astrophysicist, said in the mid-'80s, when the unified field theory is finally written down, love will be either the verb or the subject. And the chimes here on your deck have been playing the Hallelujah chorus throughout the whole thing. We thank you very much. This is just wow, wow, wow. Karen, say the magic words.
Oh, God bless you, Tom Campbell and Bruce Lipton. We're so grateful for you, and we're happy to know you. It's our honor.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you.
everybody out there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Bless you. Thank you very much.
No, that was fun.
That was great.
That was fun.
It was great. It was great.